Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Sana Maqbool and you're watching Pakistan TV. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the top stories of the hour, focusing first on what has happened in Egypt, the very important Gaza peace summit that was carried out, and of course the Trump declaration for enduring peace and stability that was also signed by world leaders, and of course marking a way forward in terms of what is next for Gaza, the immediate ceasefire, humanitarian aid being brought in, and of course moving forward towards a Palestinian Authority and disarmament of Hamas as the next steps are something on the horizon. But whether or not this is something that is also true on ground remains to be seen. We know that there are fresh airstrikes that have killed 9 Palestinians despite the ceasefire agreement that had been signed by US and other countries. And so it is important to note then, well, will this ceasefire hold, and whether or not that is going to be something that will be ensured by the US president. Next, we're going to be taking a look at what is happening within India. There is a lot that has been going on since the 4th of September when we saw that the Muslims of India raised slogans of "I love Mohamed, peace be upon him," and this is something that has become more of criminalizing a religion and of course using that for political gains for the BJP. And it is more political than religious, because in terms of what the people are asking for are the rights of the Muslims within India that haven't been given to them, and we've seen that as obviously as part of the crackdown that has been going on against those protesters, and then a huge number of cases that have been filed against them. So we're going to take a closer look at what is happening within India and what that means for the BJP and the future of Indian Muslims. And lastly, we're going to take a look at what has happened with Pakistan and Afghanistan and the very important issue of the terrorist threat emanating from within Afghanistan against Pakistan. And a number of countries, including China, the US, Russia, and others, have talked about what has happened on the border as well and said that they are willing to go ahead and negotiate peace. And this is something that have called for both countries to exercise as well. But where is the problem and how exactly to address it is something that we'll be focusing on in the show today. So these are the stories that we'll talk about in the debate. Our first look is going to be, of course, in terms of what has happened. Just yesterday, the very important Gaza peace deal has been signed and brokered, and what is now being called the Trump declaration on enduring peace and stability. But whether or not it is truly enduring is the question to be asked at the moment, because we know that there have been fresh strikes on Gaza, resulting in the killing of at least 9 Palestinians. We've been joined now by Mr. Ashraf AboArafe, who's the chief editor of Al Diplomacy, and he is going to be speaking to us at length about what is going on at the moment. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashraf, for joining us. I want your take on first, where do you think is the problem? When we talk about how the ceasefire is important, of course, a very, very integral part of the peace summit and the declaration that has been signed just yesterday, how is it then that this is going to be implemented? Because according to the US president, this is something that encompasses every aspect of what happens on the ground.
Hello. Actually, the so-called the scene of yesterday between Jerusalem and Sharm el-Sheikh was almost monitored by the whole world. But I think the Peace 2025 plan is not a declaration of war, but it is far from a declaration of justice. It is a file-based settlement with humanitarian optics, one that saves lives yet postpones freedom, that appears Washington and revives Netanyahu's image while leaving Palestinians suspended between a truce without horizon and a state without recognition. Anyway, the matter as a whole, it's a temporary relief to the Palestinians in which starvation, hunger, killing, and so on. We all actually hope that these all diseases and deadly issues Palestinians face day after day to get removed soon. Anyway, we think that the matter itself, for the welfare of Washington and Jerusalem, personally, for the welfare of the US President Donald Trump and his companion Benjamin Netanyahu. Because yesterday the scene was between the irony and the deadliest scene actually, in which the president of USA tried to improve to some extent the figure of the prime minister of Israel and his extremist government, that he made a unique victory over the opponent inside and the enemies outside Israel, including the Iran war, with no doubt that the nuclear program of Iran has been demolished and broken down at all. Uh, it looked yesterday that President of USA, Mr. Donald Trump, was so showy, referring to the proudness of his team work, beginning from his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, his envoy, Steve Witkoff, that they did a unique success not happened before. Even Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden were included in his proudness that he did what the American presidents didn't do before. So the scene as a whole was so showy, was so displaying, but actually the workforce, I think, is concerned with the Palestinians, as the ceasefire, I think, is temporary, but we wish to
Right.
be permanent. Yes.
Right, absolutely. I understand that. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashraf, for joining us and emphasizing on that, because that, of course, is important of where are we moving next and what really is going to be the way forward. The situation on ground is extremely important to understanding that when we talk about the peace deal, it is in fact bringing in peace to the region. It is, of course, a welcome step forward, and it is necessary for the ceasefire to be in place and for an immediate end of these hostilities so that we can move forward. And of course, the prisoner exchange and hostages exchange that happened yesterday is also encouraging to see. But there's a lot that needs to be done on ground to ensure that there is in fact lasting peace in the region. And for that, of course, countries that have helped broker this particular declaration will also be important in terms of the role that they can play later on and as the discussions move forward. For this, we've been joined by Dr. Muqtedar Khan, who's Professor of International Relations at the University of Delaware. Thank you, Dr. Muqtedar, for joining us. I want your take in terms of what next, because while we are celebrating what has happened yesterday, and rightly so, the declaration is important to at least starting this conversation and has also seen the exchange of prisoners and hostages, which is welcome. But in terms of what happened today and just now in terms of the airstrikes and how exactly we're going to be holding Israel accountable for holding on to the ceasefire and going by what has been agreed, where do you think is the challenge here for countries like the US?
Thank you for having me. I think, first of all, what happened with the successful completion of phase one is very important, because it achieves at least two goals which are very important, which is one is the kind of end of the war itself, and number two is allowing aid into Gaza, which is absolutely important. Otherwise, they were starving. But the chances of the ceasefire holding seems to be, quite doubtful. But the good thing that happened at Sharm el-Sheikh was that countries committed, Middle Eastern and Western countries committed to about $37 billion to reconstructing Gaza and moving forward. But there are a few challenges. Number one, we must keep in mind that Israel will use every opportunity that is available to break the ceasefire. So that is one thing that the Palestinians have to fully understand, that any excuse that Israel can get to kill and murder Palestinians, it will take immediately. So unless they want to be continuously bombed and attacked as they have been for the last 2 years, Hamas and other entities in Palestine should be careful not to derail the reconstruction project and not to derail the ceasefire. Even if there are no opportunities, Israel might try to create opportunities to break the ceasefire. And because it controls the Western media and the influencers in the West so much, that it can always generate enough hype in the West to blame it on Hamas eventually and say, look, they broke the treaty, they broke the ceasefire, so we had no choice but to go after them. This is where the Muslim countries' role comes in, where they have to ensure that if Israel does break if Israel provokes a situation which will lead to the breaking of the ceasefire, then they should make sure that there's pressure on the US to pressure Israel and not to do that. But there are challenges. The next phase requires something which is very difficult, which is the disarmament of Hamas. And if Hamas does not disarm, then nothing is going to happen. There will be no progress in the peace process. There will be no attempts to reconstruct because there will be no non-Hamas government installed. And even if the ISF is created, the International Stabilization Force, right now it's not even clear. I was hoping that at the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting, countries which everybody volunteered money, including Pakistan with $500 million to the reconstruction project, but nobody volunteered forces for the ISF. So we really don't know what the composition of the ISF is going to be and what its brief is going to be. Will ISF be now fighting between, trying to keep Hamas in check? Will it disarm Hamas? And what happens if Israel violates, like in Lebanon, for example, Israel is targeting targets which are very close to the peacekeeping forces in Lebanon. So those are some of the difficult questions which have not been addressed. Jared Kushner made a comment which I found very troubling. He says the reason why we were successful is because we did not focus on the details and in fact postpone the discussion of details of the plan. That tells me that they don't have a plan or they have not fully thrashed out how phase 2 will be achieved. So those are the two critical things as to how to ensure that Israel does not use any and every opportunity or half opportunities to basically undo everything, because Israel doesn't want a peaceful, stable Gaza. They want the Palestinians to suffer as much as possible so that they will leave Gaza and go away or die. So Israel has absolutely no interest in the reconstruction of Gaza, the stabilization of Gaza. It is doing this because it's experiencing fatigue from war and its people are not interested in fighting more, and there is no enough support in the West. I'm also worried that while the steps to reconstruct Gaza may falter, in the sense that the money might come in, but there may be no reconstruction, no ISF, but the effort by Israeli propaganda in the West, supported by Western leaders to resurrect the image of Israel, will move forward very rapidly. So it's quite possible that a year or two from now, Israel will be back and integrated into the Western society, also maybe even integrated into the Gulf countries, with a lot of pressure on countries like Indonesia and Pakistan and Iran also to join the Abrahamic Accords. And there might be no progress in Gaza because Hamas is not disarmed.
What about the internal domestic pressure that Netanyahu and his government is facing and may potentially face increasingly in the future as well? Do you think that any of that can also add to the problems that he's currently facing, and how then he will be able to navigate it? Because, of course, at one end, the genocide and the reason or the foundation of that genocide that Netanyahu had kept on playing for a while now is something that he used to save face. But in terms of the pressure coming in from US and other countries for the peace deal is also something that he had to succumb to, despite, of course, what his own intentions would have been. But in terms of what you have said, said, how then will we be able to see any sort of movement forward? And do you think that the domestic pressures within Israel can prevent that from happening?
There's a tragedy in your question, Sana. And the tragedy is you are asking me, can we rely on Israelis to protect the Gazans and the ceasefire in the long run? And that is the question. The Israeli population, a majority of them now are not interested in peace with the Palestinians, especially after what happened on October 7th. And they don't trust the Palestinians anymore. So the appetite for a two-state solution has diminished. I mean, they think that an occupied Gaza under tremendous constraints by Israel is capable of doing October 7th, and what can an independent autonomous Palestinian state or Gaza do to Israel in the future? So that is a question that the Israelis ask them very seriously. But the Israelis are also tired of Netanyahu and his corruption. And if there is an election next year, which is scheduled to happen, then there are pretty good chances that Netanyahu may not win that election. But Netanyahu has over and over and over again proved that he's quite capable of manipulating the United States as well as the Israeli population and remain in power. So either he goes to jail or he remains in power. And so he's going to find many ways in which he could remain in power. See, there's a mystery about October 7th. And one of the mysteries is that Israel, with all its tremendous intelligence capabilities, I mean, if you recall what Israel did to Hezbollah with the what are those things called, beepers, it was an amazing project that took over years to basically disable thousands of Hezbollah fighters. So for a country that has such tremendous intelligence capabilities, for them not to show up for 6-7 hours while Hamas committed atrocities inside Israel clearly shows that, I mean, we are bordering on conspiracy theories, but it clearly shows that Netanyahu allowed it to happen so that he could do what he has done in the past 2 years to remain in power, stay out of jail. So the Israeli population is not pro-Palestine in any way for them to do what Arab countries are not going to do, that is keep Israel in check, or for that matter, what West is not going to do, which is keep Israel in check. What they are going to do is they're probably going to try and get rid of Netanyahu. That is what they want, because he's also a threat to Israeli democracy. And he wants to completely eliminate the independence of the judiciary inside Israel. So they are more concerned about preventing their, or rather sustaining and preserving their democracy. And Netanyahu is a threat to Israeli democracy. But yes, there is a fatigue in terms of war in Israel, no doubt. I mean, they've been fighting everybody for the last 2 years. But I don't know whether that will translate into a change of heart and understanding and development. But I can tell you this much, that as long as Hamas remains armed and in charge of Gaza, there will be no progress on the two-state solution. There is zero sympathy for Hamas. And after October 7th, Western leaders are going to, it is only Donald Trump who has got away by negotiating a deal with Hamas, but other leaders will not be eager to discuss with Hamas. They will keep telling the Palestinians that bring us a partner for peace, like they have done in the last 25 years. One reason why the peace process has remained stalled is because of the division within the Palestinians themselves. West Bank is ruled by a useless old man, and Palestinian Authority, which is very corrupt, and Gaza is ruled by an extremely authoritarian and extremist organization, which would rather remain divided than united. So the Palestinians, if they cannot get their act together, which is very difficult to ask, given that on a daily basis they are suffering from all kinds of atrocities that Israel. I mean, atrocities by Israel are routine. So imagine half your day is spent in standing in lines, etc. So the Palestinians, expecting the Palestinians to get their act together is very difficult, and that is where the role or the lack of leadership from the Arab countries comes in. They are always trying to manage crisis, but they're not taking leadership. And if they return to the Abrahamic Accords. Look, a genocide did not break the Abrahamic Accords. So it shows to us that the Arab countries are so committed to having a relationship with Israel, or at least with the US, and they think the only way they can have a relationship with the US is via Israel. And Muslims, unlike the West, which when the West talks of a community and unity, there is a seriousness to it. So let's use the word ummah for the Western community. So the Western ummah, when it talks about ummah's unity, they are bloody serious about it. They are able to create a European Union. They are able to create a NATO.
Yeah.
And when Israel is attacked, all these Western countries send weapons to defend it. But if you want to know about the Muslim ummah's unity, you don't have to go too far. Just look at your own border today. Islamic Republic is at war with the Islamic Emirate. So much for Islamic unity. So Muslims are divided. They are incompetent. Their governments are incompetent. They are desperately seeking somebody to support them. Iran threatens the Arabs, so they run towards the Abrahamic Accords. So they are just managing crisis because the regimes are afraid that if the violence in Gaza would continue, then there could be rebellions in Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there is no concerted commitment to the Palestinian cause anymore in the Arab world.
Right, but if I may just touch upon what you said, Mr. Khan, is the Western Ummah, as you're calling it, really as strong as it seems?
Well, you tell me. They won every battle that was fought in the last 2 years. Iran is finished. What is Iran doing? Iran has become completely irrelevant to what is going on in the Palestinian state. The sanctions are back from the UN. The Iranian people are going to suffer. Look at Muslim leaders. I mean, your own prime minister has renominated Donald Trump for another Nobel Prize for 2026. So all our leaders look as if they are sycophants sucking up to Donald Trump. The only little bit we saw
But that's a different aspect,
toughness
Mr.
was
Khan.
when
I'm talking
Erdogan
about
refused.
I understand, but that's a different aspect. I'm talking about the aspect of the EU countries being together or NATO countries being together. Are they truly on a united front?
Well, it depends on what you want to test as a standard. But if you look at it relatively, there is no other cultural international body which is as united as the West is at the moment. There is still a lot of aid going to Ukraine for the last 3.5 years. They have sent hundreds of billions of dollars of aid. Let me give you a simple example. If you take all the OIC countries and just join their militaries, you know how many soldiers OIC has? 8.9 million soldiers, which is equal to Israel's population. And how many Muslim countries provided weapons or arms or anything to support the Palestinians in this battle? Zero. Except Iran, nobody. Whereas if you look at the Ukraine situation, there is billions of dollars going, weapons going constantly to Ukraine. Ukraine wouldn't have lasted even 3 weeks without the support from the West. If you take the case of Israel too, when Iran attacked Israel in October of 2024 or April the first time, the British Air Force was there, the French were there, the Americans were there, planes to protect Israel. So look at Israel getting so much help from so many countries.
I understand. Mr. Khan, unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for those valid points and important, particularly in terms of how we understand the future dynamics and how it is going forward, especially for the people of Gaza. But one thing's for sure, it is countries like the United States and Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt that have ensured that at least there is an immediate ceasefire, there is humanitarian aid that is flowing in, and of course, the way that we've seen violations taking place is something that these countries will be cognizant of and moving forward ensure that what happens on ground, we are moving towards a free Palestine, because at the end of the day, that is what all of these efforts were aimed at. And so that remains the goal and needs to be something that everybody has eyes on. Our next story is going to be what is happening within India. We've seen that there have been a lot of discussions around crackdowns against Muslims in India for quite some time now, but especially since 4th of September this year, when we saw a number of I Love Mohammed, peace be upon him, slogans being raised in Kanpur, and this is something that then spread throughout the country. And what is important also is the discussions around free speech, the discussions around political religious extremism, and then of course the way that the government criminalizes this and uses it for its own good. And whether or not this will be something that the BJP will be able to play around this time around, and what impact does that have on a large percentage of the population of India, it remains to be seen, and it's something that the government need to really think about and consider when it moves forward. But what remains the issue is that the rights of the Muslims of India need to be protected and aren't being done so. And so we're going to be taking a further look as to how exactly this discussion is going to move forward, and whether or not the way that this is being targeted is something that is supported by the judicial system of the country and is accepted by communities both within and outside of India, so that the state and those who are using this crackdown for their own good and in their own vested interests are held accountable, and how exactly we're going to move forward from that. The important aspect also is in terms of the way that this is not just something that is limited to a certain area, as is being spoken about from within the rhetoric of India, but this is something that is widespread, is a shared experience and a shared feeling of the Muslims of India that are only claiming their position within the country. It is not just a religious sentiment that is at the moment important, it's also a political sentiment that they have the rights as equal citizens of the country as any other belonging to any other religion. And so what is important then is to question the way that the crackdowns are happening, and whether or not the laws and the way that the people of India are treated are different based on the religion. For this, we've been joined by Dr. Mohamed, who's the president founder of the Center for Pluralism and director of the World Muslim Congress. Thank you very much, Dr. Mike, for being part of the debate today. I'd like your take first in terms of what you think really is going on, because what is so wrong about people coming out with banners of I Love Mohammed, peace be upon him, of course a very important and sacred element of the religion Islam. This is something that is integral to not just the religion that we're talking about, but also the political aspects of the Muslims of India. Is that not important for the state to protect?
Absolutely. Right now, India, not India, I shouldn't say India. India is a great nation. Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal to everybody. What's happening in India, I Love Muhammad sparked the outrage when, and there are 22 cases were filed against about 2,500 Muslims, with 40 arrests across BJP states. And it is happening in BJP states like Maharashtra, UP, and Haryana and other places. It's not happening all across India. And I think Muslims felt outraged. And this is the only way to express love and nonviolence, by holding the placard, I Love Muhammad. And it is spreading all across India. And I hope it sends a clear message. And not only this, I think what is missing in reporting is so many hundreds of Hindus are holding the placard and saying, what is wrong if I love Muhammad? I'm a Hindu, but Muhammad is a great sage. I love him. Like I love Krishna or someone else. But the problem is with the BJP government in Uttar Pradesh, the Yogi, he's got full of hate for Muslims, and that hate is translated into arrests and also protesting, preventing protests, and which is the basic rights of every citizen of India.
Right, Dr. Mike. Right, Dr. Mike, how does this impact the BJP? Is it really helping them with their Hindutva ideology still, in terms of the kind of questions that the people are now raising for them not even delivering to the people of India, not just the Muslims, but in general? And so when we talk about these crackdowns, are they in any way helping the stakes or the position, the popularity of the BJP, or is it worsening the situation for them? And then when we take a look at the other parties, how are they using this situation, and whether or not they're any better for the Muslims of India?
About 37% of the Hindus, not all Hindus, only about 37% of Hindus are supporting the BJP. All others, 63%, are split into 4 to 5 parties without getting any kind of majority. And they are trying to gain more support from the extremists among the Hindus by doing this nonsense, arresting and showing that, look, we are punishing Muslims, we're against Muslims, you need to give us the vote. And they will not gain any support. They duped Indians, all Indians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, for a long time, for almost 10 years. I don't think they can dupe us anymore. People are waking up and they're looking to have jobs, not to go against somebody who's protesting, not protesting or processing, saying, I love Muhammad. What is wrong with it? And even Hindus are questioning that. And I think that is creating difficult for BJP rather than make it easy or gain them votes. And they are going to lose it.
Right, and especially when we take a look at the legal aspects, there are important questions being asked in terms of the judiciary. You keep on saying, what's wrong with saying I love Muhammad, peace be upon him? That's an important statement, not just, of course, for the Muslims, especially so, but there are, of course, others who respect the religious aspects of different people and what they hold sacred. And so when we take a look at the constitution, or when we take a look at the judiciary, what is that allowing in terms of the space that the Muslims in India occupy? Is it an illegal aspect of these protests for banners claiming I love Muhammad, peace be upon him, to be raised on the streets?
No, it is not illegal
Those
at all.
cases that you just mentioned.
No, it is not illegal at all. They have a right to do that. The Supreme Court will step in, but they will always step in little too late. They will step in and say, what's happening is that you are familiar with Muslim homes are being bulldozed. Those who are participating in protests or marches, their homes are being bulldozed. And the Supreme Court had just issued an order about 2 weeks ago that you cannot bulldoze anybody's home without due process. There should be a reason and cause for that. But Yogi is going against the Supreme Court. And I hope Supreme Court will take a strong action and to prevent and send a lesson to the Indians that you cannot disrespect law. The law allows one to protest. The law allows one to hold free speeches, and they can walk anywhere they want to do it. And I think Muslims need to take a strong steps towards this. And of course, thank God to the Hindus. The majority of Hindus are supporting Muslims. It is only a small 37% of Hindus that are creating these problems.
Thank you, Dr. Mike Mohamed, for joining us and sharing your views with us. It is extremely important, of course, to understand what is going on within India, but what is more important is that the people in the state are holding each other accountable for the actions that are going on ground. And while the crackdown continues, it is important for the world community to also realize that this is not what the BJP claims it is. It is not a secular state if it does not allow people of different religions to express themselves freely. We're now going to take a look at our last story that focuses on what is happening within Pakistan and Afghanistan. And this is especially important for us in terms of the kind of terrorism activities and threats that are emerging from within Afghanistan. While, of course, these reassurances were given by the Afghan Taliban regime previously as well, it is something that continues despite these reassurances, with safe havens also being provided to these terrorist organizations. And that is something of concern to Pakistan. And while also statements have been coming coming in from other countries, including Russia, China, and the US. What is it that these countries can really do about the situation? Let's talk more about this with Mr. Jehangir, who's Director of Communications and Center for Community Media and an Afghan Affairs Analyst. Thank you very much, Mr. Jehangir, for joining us. I want your take in terms of when we take a look at the way that the international community, especially important countries like Russia, China, and the US, are viewing what is going on between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Do they really understand what is the core of the issue and what really is going on? Because, of course, Pakistan has been putting forward the stance of how these terrorist activities are emerging from within Afghanistan, how safe havens are being provided, calling for the Afghan Taliban regime to make sure that that doesn't happen. Is that something that the international community understands?
Thank you for having me on your show, Sana. I think international community do understand the issue because international community is one of the contributors as well to the numerous reports that we have seen over the past few years, which maintain that Afghanistan has at least 14 different training camps in 14 provinces. Rather, 14 provinces have different training camps. Let me put it this way. Long War Journal, which is an American publication, published a map as well, which showed different training centers and safe houses in different provinces for Al Qaeda and TTP and other terrorist organizations. According to the UN, there are about 14 to 15 international terrorist groups which are on Afghan soil. So everybody knows that. Uh, the big question is that what everybody can do to stop it. I think so far, all the international organizations, as well as all the events that have happened recently, including the one which was part of the Moscow format, which just concluded in Moscow. And if you look at the final communique, it does mention Afghanistan and terrorism, Afghan soil and terrorism. So you do see that mention. And when it comes, so everybody has signed off on this statement. So I think everybody is concerned, but different countries have different levels of concern. Pakistan or have always maintained that Afghan Taliban are providing safe havens to the TTP members and their leaders in Kabul and other parts of the country, whereas Russia, the US, Iran, and other countries maintain that for them, the bigger threat is Daesh. So every country has a concern. Why? Because it is related to some sort of terrorism, whether it is Daesh or TTP. Since Pakistan is uh, facing a lot of security challenges because of the TTP activities in the border regions, especially, which have been completely destabilized. I think that's why we see a lot of pressure from Pakistan on Afghan Taliban. And since nothing has happened in Central Asia, watch the day anything happens, and then you will see the tone will be different. When Chinese lost their lives in northern Afghanistan, China had a different tone. So I think every country is looking at their own interests as well. So I think it's not a very simplistic approach where you can just say that everybody's
Absolutely.
concerned.
I understand that, but there have been statements coming in from China and the US as well in terms of offering for peace or helping in any way possible to the situation. But what does that mean in terms of tangible steps and action that can be taken? Because this is not just a regular aspect of two countries having different aspects or agreements on a certain issue. This is a real terrorist threat that Pakistan has been paying the price for. And so when we take a look at what counterterrorism efforts can be put in place, what do you think these countries can really do on ground?
I think much of it has been done. Look at the Afghan Taliban leadership. Almost 40 top leaders are on the UN sanctions list. Whenever they are moving out of the country, they have to seek permission from the United Nations Sanction Committee. So I think they are doing that. Many of the countries have sanctioned, but many of the countries are opening up to Taliban as well. Look at Russia. They have allowed an embassy. They have recognized. Look at Kazakhstan. They have recognized. Look at China. They have accepted their ambassador So while they are using some leverage, I don't think that they are willing to do a lot on their own. I don't think that we should be looking at others. I think we should be engaging Taliban more, talk to them, because I don't think any solution will be found through any military action. We have found it in the past and probably will find it in the future as well. So the best course of action for Pakistan and Afghanistan is that they have to sit together and talk it out and reach some level of concern and consensus. For example, even Taliban, there are reports now emerging that divisions have appeared within Taliban as well. Like today, when I was joining this show, I just watched about a minute long clip of Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the head of the so-called Haqqani network. Uh, he is saying in Pashto language that some people are claiming that they have done jihad and they are big jihadis, and then he said they should not be making such claims because they never participated in any jihad. Remember, he was referring probably to the statements that Amir Khan Muttaqi made in India. So I do see that there were fault lines within the Taliban leadership before, but this is one of the most rare occurrences where Sirajuddin Haqqani is coming forward and speaking, or just walking away from their mainstream support for anti-Pakistan forces on Afghan soil. Before that, a few months back, the same Sirajuddin Haqqani had virtually had an altercation with Afghanistan's higher education minister during an event at a seminary in Kabul, where again he criticized their main leadership. So I think there is a gulf that is growing between eastern Afghanistan and the southern part, especially Kandahar, where the main leadership is sitting. And it looks like that is a very, very public,
Yeah.
I must say, criticism of their top leaders.
Right. Thank you very
So,
much, Ms. Jehangir Khattak, for joining us and being a part of the debate. And this is relevant what you're mentioning, because that is something that Pakistan has been putting forward for quite some time as well. And it is something that the world must recognize. Here's the crux of the debate today. We'd looked at, of course, what has happened in the peace summit yesterday. And while what the declaration says is welcome, it is important to understand whether or not it is echoed on ground and that the realities on ground are also the same. What happens in India is not just about a freedom of expression. I love Mohamed, peace be upon him, is as much political as it is religious. And lastly, of course, when we talk about counterterrorism efforts that Pakistan has been putting forward for quite some time now, it is also now time for other countries to realize that Pakistan has been paying a very high price, and so the threat that emerges from Afghanistan must be curtailed. That's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.